Good morning. This is Alice from So What, and I'm getting ready to kind of get myself organized to do cup of cheer. So I do have the quilting pattern. With the quilting patterns, there will be an affiliated link on So What if you want to use that. It gives us credit, but you do have to purchase that on the Kimberbell site. All right, it is on sale through the end of the month. So I did get that. So I printed out the paper, a PDF file, which comes in that package, which tells us these are the numbers that go to the quilting pattern. All right. So if you look, I'm going to do like the stars, so is what I'm going to start. So like when I do block 33, I flip it over and I find block 33 here, and it tells me the star is winter from the collection Winter 2. And it's a 6x6 design that I want to use, and that's the actual file name. So KDQ099 Winter 2 is the file that I'm using. All right. So that's what you get that you need to print out. If you are, put it on the computer so you can look at it. You can go back and forth for the quilting design that you need. So I'm going to set that aside right now. I went and took my book to Staples and I had them do the spiral. I'm really happy with that. Just want to show you guys, like as you open the page, it does cut a little bit of the wording out, but I do believe that it's going to be just fine reading wise. All right. But I do like the fact that I can flip this book open very nicely now when doing that. The next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to go through my fabric kit. And I really like to make sure that I have the fabrics that are called out here. Make sure that I'm looking at the same size of that fabric. If it's different, then I'm going to make a note. All right. So I'm going to set my book aside. And we're going to look at what that was in the fabric kit, okay? Actually, I'm going to take my book this way for right now. So when you opened up your fabric kit, you actually had this paper item on top. It's a little mug that you can put together and assemble. So I'm going to put that back in the bottom of my box. So I have my box here right next to me. So all my fabric was wrapped up, with the Maywood Studio little tie. This was what was on top. All right, so this piece that's on top, if you open it up, you have your binding, and these are your outer borders, okay? So I want you to be aware that your binding and your outer borders were wrapped up in here. And if I go to my book, and I flip over to page 7, you should have 1 yard of this printed fabric for the border, the outer border, and you should have a ½ yard for your binding. So those two I have in that one pack, and all I'm doing is I'm just putting a little highlighter there, and I'm highlighting the fact that I have those two. These I'm not going to need for a while, so I'm actually just going to put them right in the bottom of the box. Okay. The next thing on your pile of fabric is these little 5x5 squares. So these are what is called a scrap piece of fabric. So in your kit of fabric, you have 5x5 for scrap. You have some fat 16ths, 9x11, fat 8ths, 9x21, and fat quarters, 18x21. All right, so I went through my scraps, and I already started this. So I have a scrap here of the green, and that's what it says I should have. Black car tires. I have the gray polka dot for the mug. All right. Then I have 2 left. I have the blue with the trees for a filler block, and I have a teal for the house roof. So I have all of those pieces. So I'm just going to set them in my box, and I highlighted those as I went. All right. So now the next stack that you have is going to be these little 9x11 called fat 16ths. Okay. So I had them in order when I was looking at them. I actually looked at these pictures of how I'm going to cut the fabric. and I put them in that order. That's not the order that they're called out over here on the cutting pages. Okay, so what I'm going to do with you guys is I'm going to highlight the fact that I have this item called fat 16ths. So I have this blue, and there it is right there, and it does say that it's a fat 16th. So I have that one. So I'm just going to do a little highlight on it because I know that I have it, and I have it at the correct size. Right, I have a dark blue with some scrolling things on it, and that is this one. That is also a fat 16th. I have a plain blue as a fat 16th. Then I have this house one. That is also on here, a fat 16th. I have the green with the print on it, like the candy canes and peppermints. So that is a fat 16th. So I have that piece of fabric. I have this green. Okay, that is a fat 16th. Now I have a light like tannish color. And I am looking for that one because this is dots. So maybe it's on the other page. Right there, fat 16th. It's like a greenish tan, khaki. You know, it's kind of in that color, but there's that one. All right, and now I have, it's like a gray background with the holly on it, also in a fat 16th. So where are the ones with holly? I must be missing them. My eyes must be scanning over it too fast. Not okay, right there, down here at the bottom of the page. That was the last. Nope, I have another. That's a fat 16th, and it does say that it's a fat 16th. Okay, then I have this house one. Okay, which is on the grayish dot background, and that's right here, and that is also a fat 16th. And then I have the pink mugs, which is a fat 16th. It's at the bottom of the page here. Okay, and now I have two more fat 16ths left in my pile. I have a white on white, and it's like a starish type pattern, but it's white on white. So it's going to be hard to tell these items, but right here they show it. That is a fat 16th, but it is a white on white. And then the last one that I have is a white background with a black polka dot, which is also a fat 16th. So right there are all my fat 16ths. Fabrics that were in my fabric kit. All right, so I'm just kind of scanning real quick because I have different sizes of fabric than so here's one that says a fat 16th, but I did not have it that color in a fat 16th. This was the whole stack of fat 16ths that I had. Okay, so I am going to set these right in the box because I already went through these. And these were all the ones that were packed together in my fabric kit as a fat 16th. All right. And all I'm doing right now is I'm just making sure, hey, this color is this piece. This color is this piece, and I have what I need. All right. Because the next pack of fabric that you had is going to be the 9 by 21 or the fat 8s. All right. So if I start going through my fat 8s and marking them off next, we'll see where we get. Okay, and then we'll find the ones that we are missing. So this is a fat eighth, and I have that red one right here is a fat eighth. I have the star red as a fat eighth. I have the red stripe, also a fat eighth. This one is the really all the teal colors on white, but it's a stripe. And we have it in a fat eighth, so I'm looking for it in my fabrics. So right here it is, and it does say that it's supposed to be a fat eighth. Okay, and now I'm back to teal, and these have the candy canes on them in the peppermint. So right here, fat eighth. Okay, and then I have the teal with the snowflakes as a fat eighth. I have this green, just solid green. It's a silky solid in a fat eighth. And I have this light color green and a fat eighth. I'm still seeing these, and I'm highlighting them off. And this is a white with a white dot as a fat eighth. All right, so I'm going to have to flip the page again. I keep closing my pen because I don't want to mark something that's not, you know, I don't want to mark my fabric or anything with my pen. So right here, down here is that white, and there it is as a fat eighth. So when I went through my pile, that's what I had as fat eighth. Okay. So the fat eighth is a 9-inch piece cut in the middle, so it's 9 by 21. So all I'm going to do is stack these up in the box and move them out of my way. All right. Now when I opened the fat eighths up, these were also in that stack of the fold. So it said that this gray with the trees, it gave me a fat eighth. It gave me a fat eighth of this dark brown. And I thought it was a fat eighth of this red, but actually this is a 9-inch piece with a fabric. All right. So with this one, I know what this one is, only because I know how they pack things, and it happens to be the 1/4 yard for the inner border. This is the inner border. So be very careful when you open up that pack. Make sure you take that one out. That is your inner border. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that I have my inner border. All right, I have my 1/4 yard. I am now going to take this, so I don't do anything with it. I don't want to cut this because this is border fabric. I'm going to actually throw it all the way in the bottom underneath my outer border and my binding, so it doesn't get confused with any of the other fabrics. All right, so now if I look at these two that were supposed to be a fat eighth, 9 by 21, because this is their size. This brown said I should have had a fat 16th. I really received a fat eighth. All right, so I have more fabric here than what's called out. Now, I don't know if that was called incorrectly, and I really need this, and that's just a typo. All right, and then I have this gray with the red trees. So I'm looking back. So here it is. It says I should have had a fat 16th of that. And again, I got a fat eighth. All right, so these two, I received more fabric of these colors than what it calls out in the book. Now, is the book wrong? I don't know. So that we'll find out as we start to cut our fabric later. All right, so what I did was I marked the gray with the trees with the word 8, and I took the brown, and I also marked that as I have an 1/8 of it. So I didn't get a 16th, I got an 1/8, which is bigger pieces. All right, so I'm gonna lay those two in my box right now. Okay, so now I have my fat quarters. So I opened up the fat quarters and I folded them all separately. All right. And I have them laid out here. So I'm going to flip over and we're going to look at where we have a fat quarter. Now the fat quarter is 18 by 21. All right. So I have this iceberg. It's like a greenish blue as a fat quarter. I have this red. It's a solid red. And I have a full fat quarter. Okay. Then I have the salmon color. And I probably want to flip the page over because right there it is. There's the fat quarter of that one. All right, now I have the gray with dots as a fat quarter. So here is my fat quarter, the gray with the dots. Then I have like a gray with snowflakes, a fat quarter. Then we have the gray with the striped lines as a fat quarter. Now I have the white with the red dots. Sorry, white, a white background with red dots. So that's going to be on the next page. It is down here on the side. There's my white with my red dots, making sure I have the fat quarter. This is a white on white, big dots. That's this one here is a fat quarter. Then I have the white with some like holly and candy canes on it, print as a fat quarter. Okay, I'm marking that one off. And then I had the white with the colored snowflakes, again, a fat quarter. So those were the fat quarters that I had. And then in that pile, I also had these two pieces that were fat quarters. All right. And again, when I pulled out my fabrics, I was looking at the cutting diagram and saying, okay, pull this one, this one, this one. And I just pulled them out of my pile. And I had these two that didn't have a cutting diagram for them, okay, as a fat quarter, because those are the cutting diagrams. So I'm going to look back through my page now and see what I don't have, okay? So on page 7, we didn't get the back fabric. Unless you bought the backing fabric, you don't have that right now, okay? That did not come in this box kit. That is something you have to purchase extra. All right, so I'm okay that I don't have that. So I have, going right up the page, I have 1/8 of this, which is bigger. So I have everything on page 6. I'm going to flip over and look at page 5. Like I have the exact fabric that the picture shows. Here again, I got more fabric. I got 1/8 of the fabric and not a 1/16. So I have everything covered on page 5. Going to page 4. All right, so I have the exact fabric at the exact size. This one right here, this green and holly, I should have received a fat 1/8. Well, guess what I received? I actually received a fat quarter of it. So I have the fabric, but I have a quarter of that fabric. So, sorry, I'm going to turn my book around, but I want to make sure that I know I received a quarter here. All right, so I'm going to hand write that down because I'm going to be looking for a smaller piece when I go to cut that fabric, and I don't want to. I really received a fat quarter of that piece. And as I go up, I'm looking at all my highlights. Here is this red that has the peppermints and the candy canes and swirls on it and the holly and all. Again, it says I need a fat 1/8. I really received a fat quarter of that fabric. So again, I'm going to write here that I received a fat quarter. Now, this is just me. I'm making sure that I got all the fabrics that I need, right? So I had 4 pieces of fabric. Okay, these 2 and these 2. So these 4 pieces of fabric that were in my fabric kit are bigger than what's called out in the book right now. So just be aware of that, okay? So now that I've documented that I have the exact picture of the fabric that's here, that's how I like to start, okay? Usually when you buy the fabric kit right out the gate, you're going to have that. If a quilt shop builds the fabric kit, they might have did a substitution. So hopefully they let you know that they substituted X for Y. I know it's so what. I try to, what I do is I get, when I make substitutions or I build a fabric kit, I actually print like the fabrics that are supposed to be there, and I put a little fabric piece of the substitution next to it, so you know that it's been substituted with something else. All right, so right now I have all of the fabrics called out, all right, between pages 4, 5, and 6. Pages 7 at the top, I documented that fabric. The rest of page 7 and 8 talk about, they actually show you how you need to cut your fabric. And what you want to be aware of on this page more than anything else is right here where it tells me I have a directional print. So their picture, like this tells me it's this size, and this picture says directional. You want to make sure that you're careful how you cut it, right? You want to cut it the right way. All right, so if these are square, so it is not as difficult, but when you get something that's maybe wider than it is taller, you definitely want to make sure you cut them the right way, because you can't just turn it and flip it around with the direction. If you cut it the wrong way, it's going to be too short. All right, so just be aware of those that say directional print. All right, now there is everything in your embellishment kit that you have, if you wanted to go through that. I'm not going to go through that right now because I'm not doing any of the embellishments. I'll get to that when we get there. Now, what I want to tell you about your embellishment kit, you do not have flexi foam in there. That is another product that you need to buy or have on hand. On the page 10, here it shows you need a piece 20 by 14, and here's how they're all cut. So if you have some flexi foam in your stash, dig it out. You might have pieces that'll fill in for these pieces that it's telling us to cut. But if you go and buy the piece 20 by 14, this is how you should cut it up. So it shows you how to do that. Your white felt in your kit, and your green felt, gray, and your seafoam piece here, they are showing you how to cut those items so that you get the pieces that you need. Just like with fabric. So it's a nice thing that they showed us how to cut that. All right. Now, I'm going to start with the stars. I like to just work like block by block doing this, like page by page. I don't like to like cut all my fabric up at one time and then cut up all my batting, and I don't do that because I get too bored just cutting up fabric and all that. So I like to do it in between doing things, because there's times where I can cut fabric while I'm watching a movie and it's quiet, but I don't have my machine running, or maybe I want to cut the next block while my machine's stitching out the current block. Now, some of us like to watch the machine stitch. I tend to walk away and then I'll go cut my next piece because I'm like right in the same room. So what I want to do is I want to work on these stars. All right. So I do have my fusible woven to put on the back side of the background fabric. Again, your woven fusible on the back helps with puckering. So I do want my blocks to look very nice. I also am going to need some batting, because I am going to put batting behind my squares as I quilt them. Now the batting, I'm not sure how much total. It didn't say in here. If you're using the Kimberbell batting, I'm thinking probably 3 of those. So I forget what their size is. I think they're 19 inches by 3 yards. I'm thinking you're going to need 3 of them. Now, I'm not going to start with that. I have some batting that's been open, and when you do these block by blocks, you're looking for little pieces of batting. Like in these under the stars, they finish at 6.5 or 6 by 6. I'm going to need a piece of batting, basically that's 6 by 6 for each of these. Now, your placement for your batting is going to be a little bit bigger probably than 6 by 6, and then you trim it down. I definitely do my placement lines on my stabilizer, and I will lay it exactly where it needs to go. I don't like to waste anything. So I am probably going to cut my batting for these exactly 6 by 6, just so you know, because I don't want the batting in the seams. That's also why I am doing the block by block quilting. All right, so if I go to my stars, I can see that this one is the first star is on the white background with the red dots, and I need the green poly material for the star. All right, so I'm just going to go right here in my pack and flip through till I find them. All right, so here is the star itself, right? And I past it, and that is the background. I'm going to pull them out right now. I'm just going to show one. I'm going to do one, and then I can go over and do the others later. So I want to go to where we're cutting the star out. And I know I'm flipping back and forth, but I'd rather do that than cut everything at one time. It's just me. You can cut that all out if you would like to. So I want my star background. That's the white with the red dots, and that's what it is. I have the exact size I need. All right, and when you're done, you'll have 4 pieces cut out of this, okay? I don't like to cut out my appliques. So if it was an applique out of this fabric, I don't like to cut it out. I like to just use the fabric as it is, or check my stash if I have a big enough piece for the applique, and I'll use it that way. So the star block says 8.5 by 8.5. And if I go to where I am cutting the fabric, so I'm looking for the white fabric with the red dot, which is right here. It's at the bottom of page 7. All right. So if you look here, you're going to be cutting an 8.5 by 8.5, a 14.5 by 6.5, and 2 5 by 5s. That's what needs to be cut out of this white fabric. Again, I'm not cutting everything right now. I want to cut my star block. The other thing I do is my star block finishes 2 inches smaller than what Kimberbell has you cut the block at. So you end up trimming like maybe 1.5 inches off all the way around. All right, because when you quilt it, it might pull it in a little bit, and when you're doing your embroidery, it might pull it in a little bit. So to start with, I cut my block 1 inch smaller than it says because it's a background. So I am going to cut this block 7.5 by 7.5. All right, now when I look at this diagram here of how they're cutting it, the only other piece, the big piece that's cut out of here that, you know, they're saying put it on the line, I'm just going to cut this piece out, and I'm just going to take it right out of the corner. So I want to make sure that I'm not you know, account for that the selvage. Don't put that in your inches. When you're cutting the blocks for the background, make sure this is not part of what you're cutting, because we don't want that anywhere near our seam, you know, getting closer to our edge of our block. So I'm going to take this corner right here, and I'm going to cut my piece 7.5 by 7.5. All right, 1 inch smaller than what it says to cut it for the star block. And then I'm going to cut my fusible woven a little bit smaller than that, because I don't want this to stick to my iron or my ironing board. I to play it safe, I don't need this all the way to the edge of the fabric. I can actually cut it like 7 by 7 or 7 1/4 by 7 1/4 and lay it on the back and fuse it down. So I will cut this woven fusible a little bit smaller than this. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to apply it to my background fabric. That'll have this fabric ready for me. This fabric here, the star, they want you to cut the star out. So like, you know, cut a piece of applique and they want you to cut it 6 by 6. And then what you'll do is you'll trim around the star and you'll have extra fabric that are going to be really small pieces. So I'm not going to cut a 6 by 6 square. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure I iron this. I'm going to stitch, you know, my applique placement line, and I'm going to place this down and try to place it in this corner as close as I can so that I can conserve some of this fabric and I won't be using a full 6 by 6 square. All right, up to you. I like to do it this way. I like to make my appliques, just lay my fabric down for my appliques, and that's what I'm going to do. The other tip with doing the star block, whatever the star color is the color that you're going to stitch around it. You pick the color that you want. Most of the designs here in Kimberbell, they did this in a green around. Make sure you use that same color to do the tack down of this star fabric. Don't tack this down in red and then use green on top to do the decorative stitch around. You're going to see that color underneath. So just be careful. Make sure you use the same color when you go to do this. Now, this fabric here is not light colored. You know, when I lay this on the white, as far as I'm concerned, I'm fine with the way that that looks. I'm not going to put fusible woven on this. All right. I also think that the star has a really nice decorative stitch all the way around it. It's not quite satin, but I don't think it's going to fray or anything like that. They really looked nice when I saw them out there, the people that have done them already. So I am not going to put fusible woven on this applique fabric. If you would like to do that to make this a little bit more stiffer or just in case fray wise, then go ahead and do that. I'm not doing that. All right. The other thing that I will have is I will be hooping a cutaway, and I like to use the poly match cutaway. It's just plain cutaway. All right. There's no fusible or anything on it. This is what I'm going to be hooping. All right. And I will get out my batting, and I'm going to be, you know, I need a piece that is at least 6 inches by 6 inches. In my scraps of batting, if I have it that it's a little bit bigger, I'm just going to lay it on top when it does the placement line. It tacks it down. You'll trim around it and it'll fit just fine. All right. So if I only have a piece that's 6 by 6, it'll be just fine. You know, and if you wanted to like put a little piece of tape on it to hold it in place, you can go ahead and do that. But to me, when you put cotton fabric right down on top of the batting, it's going to hold it just fine. So I'm going to get star 1 ready so that I can do that. And then what will happen is I'll do the same thing, like maybe while this is stitching my star out, I'll go to star number 2. Right? So I'll just flip back here to that page. And my star number 2, I'm looking for my white fabric with the big gray dots or white dots on it. I think they're white. I think it's white on white. And I need to find the teal with the snowflake to make the star. So again, I'm not going to cut that star, but I'll cut that background out at 7.5 by 7.5, an inch smaller than what Kimberbell called for. So that's how I'm going to do this block number 1, and then I'll do the same thing for 2 and 3. So I'll show you when I stitch it out, but I just wanted you to know how I'm going to cut my first blocks out. If you like to use the zip bags or the clear pouches to put all your blocks in as you cut them out, you can do that. Again, I don't. I just go page by page and I'll start stitching my things out. And if there's something I don't want to stitch right now and I want to skip it, then I'll skip it and I'll come back to that page. So I just want to start with the stars on page 12 of the book. So I am going to go load up the quilting file, then I'll load up the star file on top of it so that I have everything in my hoop that I need. Make sure that they're one on top of the other and they're in the center. I will tell you that your hoop size is probably going to be, you're going to need a hoop size bigger than 6.5 by 6.5 to do the quilting. All right, so the star itself only takes a 5 by 7 hoop, but if you're going to use the quilting file, you're going to need a bigger hoop. I am going to be using a 9 by 9 hoop, so I am probably going to try to move my designs to like a bottom corner so that everything is set up in the corner so that I can conserve my stabilizer. So I'm just giving you guys a heads up. If you have like an 8 by 8 hoop, that might be pretty good for doing the star. I believe, let's look. That's not the one. Does it tell me? 33 says okay, in the file name of the quilting, it calls it a 6 by 6 because that's the finished size. But the design file itself is going to be bigger than 6 by 6, and I don't have that here handy for me. I would bet that finished size of that design is probably a little bit bigger than 6.5 by 6.5. All right, and we can look at that file when I call it up, but so your hoop's going to have to be a little bit bigger than that. All right, or at least that big in order for you to be able to do the block by block stitching. Thanks.